back. Straight to the content. No bullshit. No plugging the channel. None of that horse shit. Right to the content, because that's why you're here. And I'm here to deliver. So we're into what? Episode 5 of Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy had just abducted 2 women from Sammamish State Park on July 14th, 1974. And I believe those were his 8th and 9th victims. So Bundy's next known victim doesn't really come until November 8th, when he tries to abduct Carol DeRanch. And that's a big gap. Okay, so as we have seen his progression and his evolution, you know that that's not right. Okay, it doesn't take a seasoned detective, an investigator to figure out, hey, he is not going to go from July 14th to November 8th without killing somebody, unless circumstances dictate he can't. Circumstances such as he's locked up in jail, and we know that that wasn't happening. So what does happen, though, is he moves. I believe on August 30th, he moves from Seattle area, Washington State, to Utah to attend a law school there. I got a little bit of a problem with that. So Bundy later on in life, again, you know, to try to spare his life, he began confessing to some crimes. And he confesses to the October 2nd disappearance of Nancy Wilcox, who was age 16. That was on October 2nd. Even that is obviously too long of a time gap for me in Bundy's progression. You're talking July 14th, 1974. He abducts 2. He became brazen enough to do 2 on one day, and now he's not going to murder anybody else until October 2nd. So you got July 14th, August 14th, September 14th. Okay? That is way too long for Bundy's urges to stay dormant. So he ends up also then confessing, which makes me feel a little bit better about this, is that in September 74, he kills an unknown hitchhiker in Idaho. Now, you're saying, what the hell is he doing in Idaho? Again, Bundy's not afraid to travel to where, you know, he wants to kill. He's been known to travel up to 400 miles away. So, now, I believe this to be true based on, again, the time period, the time lapse. But again, July 14th, remember that date. That's a big date here in Bundy's career as a serial killer. However sick, deprived he is, July 14th is a big date for investigators, because it's the first time he took 2, and then there seems to be a gap, and I don't believe there should be a gap. The gap keeps closing. Again, we go from a known abduction November 8th in Carol DeRanch to October 2nd. It's getting a little bit, you know, shorter gap, to September of 74. Okay, he confesses. But you still have from July 14th to September. There's another one in there. That's my belief. And I don't know who it is, but I guarantee there is. But let's talk about the ones that we know now. So on August 30th, he moves to Utah. On October 2nd, he confesses to killing Nancy Wilcox. On October 18th, the police chief's daughter, Melissa Ann Smith, he confesses to killing her. And on October 31st, again, that Halloween day, How many people have I looked at on this channel that was Halloween? At least half a dozen now. He abducts and kills Lori Amy. So in October alone, 1, 2, 3. 3. Remember before how it was spaced out? About a month, a little over a month. Then July 14th, 2 in one day. Now we're in October. He does 3 killings, at least 3 killings in 1 month after he moves to Utah. Now, why did he move? Well, Bundy will say that it's because he is attending law school in Utah. But it's also my belief the public's going crazy with all these missing girls in Washington. So he moves to a different hunting ground. That's all it is. And again, it's another university setting. But what struck me while I was researching, again, I'm not a Ted Bundy expert, so I don't know all these intimate details. But while I'm researching it, and I'm going to make mistakes, make no doubt about it, you know, I will pronounce a name wrong, I'll get a date wrong, I'll miss a victim. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, I think I have it pretty much figured out. And what bothers me is the age of these victims now in Utah has dropped. We're talking 20 to 24-year-old girls and college girls in Washington. But when I look at the Utah killings, Nancy Wilcox, 16. Melissa Ann Smith, 17. Lori Amy, 17. Carol DeRanch, 18. Now, the age is dropping. So, as somebody that wants to know why, that's the big question. Is it just a coincidence? These are things that I would have asked Bundy. Why? And maybe he wouldn't know why. Maybe it was just opportunistic. Maybe he found them more attractive now. Maybe he figured they didn't put up as much of a fight. I don't know. But it cannot be argued that the age has dropped. So, let's go to Nancy Wilcox. He confesses to this murder decades later. Her body, he says he buried it at Capitol Reef National Park. Now, what's significant about that is 2 things. One, it's another national park. It's another forested area. Why? Again, one, well, if you just dispose them on the street corner, much like the Grim Sleeper, Lonnie Franklin, if you know anything about that case, I did some investigation for the Reelz Channel on a show called Friends Speak.
When you deal with serial killers, a lot of times you're looking for MO, you're looking for signatures, you're looking for things that tie these victims together.
And when I was researching for that, yes, that's what he did. So they're found pretty quick. You don't want the bodies to be found. So why not take it to a secluded area? But secondly, and probably more importantly to Bundy, he can go back and have necrophilia activities with these victims. So, but this Capitol Reef National Park is 200 miles away from where he abducted her. Bundy is just so fascinating to me because he does things like, if I didn't know this to be true and I was an investigator on the Nancy Wilcox case and her body was found 200 miles away, I'd be looking for somebody in that area of where the body was found. Let's say within 30 miles. Ted Bundy wouldn't even be a blip on my radar. Because we don't know, you know, obviously at that point in time, everything that he had done, but I'd be like, there's no way somebody from 200 miles away is going to be killing and dumping there. It just doesn't make sense, and nothing he does makes sense. It makes you, like, think of all your investigative skills, you just put them to the side. Much like when you, and it's ironic because I got my police academy shirt on, When you go to the police academy and you learn everything, then you get out in the street and the first thing your field training officer tells you, forget everything that you learned in the academy. You're like, what the hell? You just spent 6 months learning all this stuff and they tell you to forget it. It's about what's happening on the street. I feel that same way about Bundy. You know, forget everything that you think that you know about serial murders. When it comes to Bundy, it gets thrown out the window because he does things so unique. And those are the things I'd want to ask Bundy about. Now, I believe the Nancy Wilcox case is, there was witnesses. Let me double check this before I give any false information. Yeah, she's the one that was she was spotted by witnesses in a yellow VW Bug. So, come on. Who's that? I know bugs are popular in 1974, but Ted Bundy. Well, Bundy denies this for some reason. And again, how his mind works. Why? He confessed to killing her, but he says she was never in my vehicle. He says that he abducted her at knife point, raped her, sodomized her in an orchard, and then disposed of her body. But he says she was never in my car. If she was found 200 miles away, what did he do? Put her in luggage and get on a bus and take her to a secluded spot in the National Forest? No. Again, why does Bundy... There's certain things that I know he minimizes for a reason, like Kimberly Leach, and we'll get into her later. You don't want to be looked at, in his mind, as a bad person. Okay? As weird as that sounds, that is how he thinks. So, but for some reason, he doesn't want to admit that she was in his car. Now, is it possible that he's telling the truth? Maybe. Maybe he stole a car. He had a propensity for bugs, and he's stolen bugs before, so maybe he stole a bug and took her in that. And for him saying she was never in my car, he's not lying. I don't know. But 200 miles away, she's found. The October 18th murder of Melissa Smith, she was also found in a mountainous area, and that was the police chief's daughter. She was 17 years old, and her body was discovered 9 days after the abduction. And then you have the October 31st abduction and murder of Lori Amy. And her body is discovered by hikers in a canyon. I think it was American Fork Canyon. But I believe Lori Amy's, she was decapitated, and her hair, when found, was freshly washed. And I believe that investigators obviously found that peculiar. And Bundy later admitted, you can do anything you want with them when you have time. You can make them be anything you want. So, by that statement alone, I would say that more than likely, he decapitated her and took her head back to his house where he was staying so he could put makeup on, wash her hair. All these crazy, crazy things. I think Ted Bundy was worse than what people actually think he was. Okay? And again, these victims' age are 16, 17, 17. So now we get to November 8th, Carol Durange. And this turns everything upside down because she escapes. Okay? Bundy approaches her in the mall and says, hey, your car was broken into in the parking lot. Could you accompany out there? My name is... He gives a fake name. Remember how I told you on July 14th all the witnesses at the lake where he abducted Janice Ott and Denise Naslin heard him say, "My name is Ted," and everybody's on the lookout for Ted. Well, Ted Bundy moves from Washington to Utah, and he smartened up. Instead of saying his real name, now he uses an alias. He says he's so-and-so. I can't recall the name that he used, but it certainly wasn't Ted. "I am police officer so-and-so, detective so-and-so. Please take me out to your car and I'll show you." They go out there. Carol DeRonch is 18, very good-looking woman, just like all of Bundy's victims. And we've talked about attractiveness, so I'm not going to get into that. But she notices alcohol on his breath. And remember, Bundy lowers his inhibitions by alcohol and by getting drunk. So she can see that her car is not disturbed. But Bundy convinces her, "Hey, we got some people or somebody in custody. You have to go down to the police station," or something like you have to identify your stuff, whatever the ruse was. And remember, when Bundy confessed, he said that the most powerful ruse he used was not the sling in the hand or the sling in the cast or the crutches. It was the badge. He said having that badge was the most powerful thing that he ever used as a ruse. That's important because of all the victims so far that we've known about, he's used the cast. He's used the crutches as the ruse. So he shows her ID, a badge, and she gets in his car. Now she's real suspicious because it's not a police car, it's the Bug, and the front seat is removed. So, well, let me take that back. I don't know whether the front seat was removed or not, but regardless, it's the Bug. But she gets in against her better judgment. They pass the road they're supposed to turn on. He pulls off the side of the road. She goes nuts, and she starts hitting him. He gets a handcuff on her. He pulls out the crowbar, whacks her with it. They have a fight in the front seat. She manages to escape with one cuff on and jumps out in front of a vehicle and basically jumps in, and they take off. Fatal flaw for Ted Bundy. Middle of the day, okay? Again, he's not adverse to that. Remember how he started out at night, creeping in people's houses. That's why I want to do this video series, to show you the evolution of it. Think back to the first video that we did and how he stalked. He went into houses. And I said, him breaking into that house and beating up and raping Karen Sparks, although that was his first time doing that we know of, there was other things that built up to that. And Bundy acknowledged that later on in life. He stalked girls. He started as a peeping Tom. He hit somebody with a tree branch once, he said. That was going to be his first attempt, but he didn't follow through with it. Things in his fantasy world didn't match the reality when he tried to implement it. So now he's evolved to the middle of the day, going to a mall, pretending to be something he isn't in order to abduct and kill and rape these women. Just crazy that Carol DeRonch escaped Bundy's clutches. I am sure she questions it every day. Why am I the one who escaped? Well, she did fight back. Okay? We don't know Bundy's intoxication level either. But we don't know if the other women, how much they fought back. And that's another thing that I would ask Bundy. Okay? Let's go back to Donna Manson, Kathleen Parks, Susan Rancourt. Did they fight back? He's getting so many, by the time he's interviewed and ready to confess to these murders, there's so many of them that he has a hard time remembering them. Now, initially I'd be like, I call bullshit on that, because he relishes thinking about that. I mean, he took trophies. He took Polaroids of girls. And then when he thought police were closing in, he got rid of them. But you have these trophies, and he gets off on maybe giving a necklace from Susan Rancourt, who he had strangled and killed, to his girlfriend. And then every time that he sees his girlfriend with that piece of jewelry, he can relive that fantasy. So I would initially say when he says he doesn't remember things, I'd call bullshit on it. But at the end, there's just so many victims that he might not remember who's who. Again, he said he didn't remember names. And the faces, he says when police would show him pictures, he says, I can't tell by photographs because they never look the same in real life as they do in photographs. So, but the Carol Durant attempted abduction changed everything, because she went to police, she picked out Bundy in a lineup. Whether that lineup was suggestive or not, she picked him out. Eventually, Bundy is arrested and will go to trial on this. And I think we'll get into that a little bit later on in this video. But the 4 victims, and the 5th being the unknown hitchhiker who no one knows about but Bundy confessed to, is what this video was about. And how he never changed really MOs. He continues to use a ruse. The only difference that I see in this is that his hunting ground has changed. Is that significant? Well, yes and no. Say yes, it's significant because he wants to be somewhere comfortable. And it appears that a university setting is what makes him comfortable. But it really isn't important, because I think Bundy could do it anywhere. He's such a chameleon that he could change and blend in pretty much anywhere that he wanted. So it would be a yes and no answer for me on that. On the same day that Carol Durant escaped, remember, he's done this before where his ruse isn't working. Remember when he dropped his keys, the girl was bending down to get him. He was going to strike her with a crowbar, but she backed up, and he does it again. Carol Durant escapes, and just a few hours later, he goes to a school play, and he abducts Debbie Kent. And he murders and kills her. Now, how old was Kent? Kent was 17. Again, Bundy says he killed her and left her body in Fairview, Utah, 100 miles from where she was abducted. Here's 2 different girls now. Nancy Wilcox for sure, and Debbie Kent, who are found hundreds of miles away from where they were abducted. Bundy was seen in this school play trying to pick up people to get them to come outside with him. There are many witnesses that saw him there. Debbie Kent went out to the parking lot because she was going to leave to go pick her brother up. She never made it. She ran into Bundy, and Bundy made her one of his victims. Now, DNA actually played a part. You remember, DNA isn't relevant in 74. Okay? It's almost like, how do people solve cases without DNA? That's how the new generation believes, because everything's DNA. But they did it back then. Bob Keppel and the other investigators that worked on this, I don't think enough credit is given to them for the great work they did. Sure, the critics would say, "Oh, look how long it took them." Took them, a year before they caught on to Bundy, and look how many people he killed. Well, investigations aren't just like that. You can always look back, hindsight being 20/20, and say, "Well, they should have done this, they should have done that." I promise you, they did the best that they could and beyond at what they had at that time. And Bundy was good at not leaving evidence, not leaving fingerprints, putting the bodies so animals would ravage them. All this was purposeful by Ted Bundy. He knew what he was doing in order to not get caught. So how did DNA play a role in Debbie Kent? They found a patella bone, at least a patella, and that was positively identified by DNA in 2015 as belonging to Debbie Kent. So DNA eventually did play a role in Bundy's victims in his case, but it wouldn't come until obviously decades later. But at least that gave the family maybe a little bit of resolution. I hate to say closure, because you never get closure, but that's what DNA did for that. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, possibly 6 victims from the end of July to the beginning of November. There's more in there, folks. There's more in there. His thirst for sexual gratification and violence intertwining has taken him over. Okay? He no longer is trying to suppress these urges. He's just going with them. Whenever it hits, he's going. And you can see the increase in frequency of victims and attempted abductions. I guarantee it. Remember I said from the Lake Sammamish on July 14th until, let's say, Nancy Wilcox on October 2nd. There's at least a few more victims in there that we don't know about. Multiply that by 10 and you'll get how many times he tried. He went out looking, something wasn't right, the girls that he saw didn't fit what he wanted, but he was out there and he was looking, and he even probably tried, and those girls probably never ever came forward. That's what I think about that time gap. So with these victims being younger, it's going to play a role down the line in Bundy's last known victim, Kimberly Leach. So although Bundy is going to be arrested and convicted of the attempted murder and abduction of Carol Duranch, this isn't going to happen for another year. Okay, this doesn't happen until August 16, 1975. We're in November 1974. So there's still a lot of killing that's going to take place from 74 into 75. And there's going to be a lot more victims in different states. And we'll talk about those victims in subsequent videos in this series. And then we'll get into how he was arrested, how he escaped jail twice, how that urge continued to course through his veins, and ultimately he still murdered up until 1978. Think about that. Think about all the victims we just talked about. And we're in 1974. Now sure, there was some dormant activity between 74 and 78. Why? Only because he was incarcerated. If he wasn't, he'd still be killing. So we'll get into all those and the more victims down the line as we go forward in this series that looks like it's going to end up being like 10 episodes. I was only planning on about 5, but again, Bundy is so intriguing to me because he is, although he's like a lot of serial killers, he's so unique when it comes to serial killing, when it comes to murder in general. And I just find it fascinating to try to get into his thought process. And although I know that that's a big mistake, and I learned that out early in my career, when I'd be on a crime scene, I'd be looking around saying, what would this offender be thinking? And I realized, listen, he doesn't think like you, so that's a mistake. Yet, I still do that, especially today, because I try to get in. I want to understand why. I think when you start to understand why, you get a little bit closer to being a better investigator. It's not just how and what. It's always why did it occur. So, hey, straight to the content. That was it. So until the next video, Mains out.